Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a new episode of Chatting with Lady C. Hello, Mum, how are you?
I am very well, thank you, honey. And you?
I'm good.
Oh, great,
Yeah.
great.
Christmas time.
Yes. I nearly got killed today on the road.
Yeah.
Oh, I was behind a van, a huge van. Oh, it was absolutely pouring with rain.
Mm.
We were beside a huge lorry on the left, and we were in the right-hand lane. He was zipping, and so was I. He hit a puddle of water outside of Washington. That must have been the size of this room.
Yeah.
He took off, and there was nothing I could do because his van was so big, I wasn't able to see in front of me. And there was nothing to do except hang on to the wheel and hope for the best. And hope that I did not slide across the road into the huge wheels of this van, you know, the ones with several different sets of wheels.
Yes.
And I just hung on. I have to say, Audis are fantastic cars. I just hung on for dear life. I didn't take my foot. I don't remember what I did, but I definitely didn't put my foot on the brake. I don't remember if I took my foot off the accelerator. I most likely did. Completely instinctive reaction, but I knew I had to hang on to the wheel for dear life to try to just get through it without. And I did. He ended up on. There's a huge grass bit between the two
roads.
Yeah. He ended up on it. Nothing was wrong with him, thank God. Nothing was wrong with me, thank God. And the truck had just sailed on, obviously oblivious to anything happening.
Oh, that lorry, they just go through anything. They're so heavy that little bit of flooded water won't stop them.
But this guy, because he had a huge van as well.
It's probably light as well, probably not anything in it.
Yeah. And anyway, so I've lived to tell the tale. So do you have any questions for me?
Yes, I do.
You might have been lucky. You might have inherited some money.
I don't want it.
Thank you, honey. Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
All right. So our first question today is from Lynn Howden.
Oh, before anything else, can I say thank you so much for doing the tree?
Yes.
Because you and your girlfriend did the tree, and I think you did a very nice job of the tree.
Thank you.
And I really appreciate your having done the tree.
I know we were a bit late, but we've been so busy late in the last week, so we couldn't do it before, so it was just the perfect time to just do it this week and get it over with.
Well, in my day, you didn't put up a tree until just a day or two before Christmas, most likely 3 days before Christmas.
The thing is that people are starting to do it in November. Like, some people did it just after Halloween. You're like, what?
Well, that's ridiculous.
I know, it's November. What are you doing? I think, like, you should do it from, like, maybe the 1st of December till the 1st of January. So you have it through the month. It's December, it's Christmassy, you have a tree for a month. Why would you buy a tree for 3 days and throw it away? I think if you buy the tree, have it up for a month, decorate it, enjoy it, and get rid of it.
Yeah. Okay, honey, questions for me?
Yeah, so our first question today is from Lynn Howden. Dear Lady C, first I'd like to thank you for calling out the false betrayal of the royal family in the newest Crown series. At least someone is trying to let the truth be told. Do you think Netflix's bias against the monarchy is setting the stage and is meant to encourage Harry and Meghan to continue to slander the royal family after the series is over?
I think without a doubt that is their hope, and most likely their intention as well. It's very good business. Controversy always sells more than pleasantry, and the Crown series, as it has progressed, has become increasingly controversial and actually increasingly denigratory of the royal family. And at first, even, the Queen at least at first was portrayed admirably, but she's no longer portrayed admirably. She comes across as a dull, unimaginative, really rather cold and not very pleasant person.
Mm.
And there is, I mean, now that Harry and Meghan are in bed with Netflix,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and they are setting the stage, I'm sure, as I've said before, and I agree with Lynn Howden, they are setting the stage for Meghan and Harry to be portrayed as victims of this cruel system that they're freedom fighters. They have burst free
Mm-hmm.
from all that privilege and all that exactitude and all that service, and they can bask in the delight of being in the bosom of Netflix, who's going to pay them several million pieces of silver, not just 30. So that's my take on it. What do you think?
They could definitely come and help us out here with the tears. That's what I think. If they've gone over there to help them, why can't they help us?
Yes, of course. Meghan and Harry are not interested in helping the
No,
British people.
no.
They're only interested in helping themselves,
Themselves,
you know? And any pretense to the contrary has been long since given up. And their shtick is that they are here to save the world and to encourage people. Who are they? Who are they to be encouraging the world? You know, with what are they encouraging? With what knowledge? With what anything? But anyway, enough of that. Next question, honey.
No worries. So for our next question today is from Bluebird. Thank you for this. My question is, how many charities are blessed by the royal family? And what would happen to these charities and their beneficiaries without the royal family's ministries?
Well, I know from my personal experience from the age of 22,
Mm-hmm.
when I organized my first charity event, well into my 40s, when I was, according to the Sunday Times magazine, of the top 40 charity fundraisers in this country, all of whom were women and all of whom were unpaid. In those days, we didn't get paid for this. We did it because we thought it was a good thing to do. And I was number 3 of the top 40. And I have to tell you, my observation then, and I've still, as you know, I'm a patron of various charities, and I still am associated in a minor way with a lot of charities, not in the major way that I used to be in my 20s and 30s into my really mid-40s. Without the royal family and without their help and without their patronage and without their presence at events, charities struggle. Celebrities are a very poor replacement. Celebrities are not a substitute. The royals, when they agree to attend an event, and their diaries are done 6 months in advance. Come on, Mickey, come on, you can come up. Come on, come on. Royal diaries are done 6 months in advance.
Mm-hmm.
So the charities have 6 months, 4 months, 3 months to organize an event, knowing that the royal is going to attend their event. It makes it much easier to sell tickets to that event if you are having a royal guest of honor. If you have a celebrity instead of a member of the royal family, it doesn't work as well. First of all, the public know that the celebrity it might cancel, might not, but might cancel at the 99th hour.
Mm-hmm.
Because celebrities, by and large, put their careers first. So if you have a celebrity who is going to attend an event and they get a job, film something, whatever, everybody knows it's okay for them to cancel. There is no reliability with celebrities. The public know that. Because they know that, they are more reluctant to attend an event. Also, there is no mileage where most people are concerned to have a celebrity. People on a local council or at a local school or at the Cancer Society or at a kids' charity want to meet a royal. The royals are always going to be there. So they can dine out on having met the royal for years to come. Celebrities come and go. They peak. 3 years later, they are of no account. So even when they show up, their value is more limited. I have never organized or helped to organize an event or being a patron of an event where the presence of a celebrity actually helped to sell tickets to any extent. This is super important. And this, I have said for years, is one of the main reasons why I am not in favour of Prince Charles's whole posture of slimming down the monarchy too greatly. People would much rather come to an event and meet Princess Alexandra or the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester than not. If they can meet the Prince and Princess of Wales, now the Duchess of Cornwall as she's called, but although in reality she actually is still the Princess of Wales, speaking about the previous one as well. William, Catherine, when Harry and Meghan were here, they were ticket sellers. But so are what the public would call the minor royals. They are ticket sellers. People want to meet them. People want to be photographed with them. People will have a picture of themselves with them to show their friends 30 years from now and say, oh, I remember when I was at such and such. And if you don't have several of the royal family spread out across the board attending these events, the charities suffer. That is just attending them. The patronages, there have got to be thousands of charities that the royal family patronize. Prince Philip alone had several hundred patronages. Prince Charles as well. Princess Anne. These are very valuable things because they don't have to attend every event. But people who are associated with a charity will know that sooner or later they are going to attend an event. And it's a bit of genuine stardust. And it's not temporary stardust like with Angelina Jolie. I mean, I remember once Madonna was mooted to do something that we were doing. And everybody said, absolutely not. We don't want to meet Madonna. We couldn't care less about Madonna. You know what I mean? They were really quite disparaging about Madonna.
Well, I think the same. You're not going to a charity to meet famous people. You're going to a charity to give a good cause.
Yes, yes, you are, and that's where the royals come in as well, because they are perceived as being representatives of the nation and servicing the good cause by serving the nation. And I think without the royals' patronage and without the royals' presence, I know from my own personal experience, it's a much harder slog, much harder sell, because basically most people, when they're attending a charity event, want to be getting some benefit. I mean, people would like to think that, oh, it's charity and everybody has a golden heart. It's not true. Many people have a golden heart, but many people are self-interested. And I used to say bums on seats, you know. Basically, it's about bums on seats. So I hope that answers the question. Do you think it answers the question?
Yes, I do.
I mean, you've been to events with royals, and you know that it makes a huge difference. You know, it's a much easier sell.
I would say yes. It would be nicer to meet a royal than a famous person.
Yes, yes, because the royals actually are people with genuine, lasting positions, while famous people are, come see me now, maybe tomorrow I don't. They don't exist at all, or they've dropped off the face of the earth, or something.
Just yourself, your opinion. He might have been your fan, but this guy might be your new fan now, so it can change.
So next question, honey.
Nice. So for our next question today is from Vivian Anderson. Apparently the Kandy Street flats are slated for demolition, and this is where Charles and Camilla's relationship started. You must have stories about living there. Do tell Lady C, please.
Well, of course, I haven't lived there now since 1995, I think it is. But I did live there for 9 years, actually 10 years. So, yes, I do have a lot of stories. It was the most extraordinary place to live. And Charles and Camilla's relationship did begin there. Camilla used to live in Stackhouse, which was dead opposite Lochmore House. Do you remember the Kandy Street flats at all?
It's actually really funny. The only thing I remember about Kandy Street flats are the pillars.
Yes.
Those big pillars.
Yes.
It's the only image I have in my head is pillars and the massive entrance, the glass door entrance. And that's the only two things I remember about it, to be honest.
For those of you who don't know, there were 4 separate blocks of flats around a circular courtyard that comprised the Kandy Street flats. There was Lochmore House, which was the corner of Kandy Street and Ivory Street, facing Eaton Terrace. There was Carlstrom House, Laxford House, and Stack House. We lived at number 1 Lochmore House, which the previous occupants had been the Duke and Duchess of Abercorn, and we were succeeded by Earl and Countess Peel. He became the Lord Chamberlain. Absolutely everybody who lived in the Kandy Street flats was somehow connected to the Duke of Westminster or the Grosvenor Estate, because they were covenanted, they were a bomb site. There had been a bomb, and all those buildings at the end of the war, the Duke of Westminster of the day applied for planning permission to build these 4 blocks of flats, which were in the Deco style. And he covenanted them for the friends and relations of the Duke of Westminster. They were what's known as grace and favour flats, where we paid a small rent, but not market value. So, for instance, I mean, they didn't come at absolute nothing, you know. If I remember correctly, the service charges alone were about 5,000 or 10,000 a year. I don't remember exactly what, but they were not exactly a gift.
Mm-hmm.
From that point of view, the service charges, and every 2 years they'd have to repoint all the bricks, and they were all made out of bricks. And they constantly painted, etc. So our service charges were pretty hefty, and the rents were well below market value. Everybody there had a connection to the royal family or to the Duke and Duchess of Westminster. The previous Prime Minister, Lord Hume of the Hersal, who had been Sir Alec Douglas Hume when he was Prime Minister, and previous to that had been, I forget which number, maybe something like the 12th, 13th or 14th Earl of Hume. He lived there. Sir Martin Charteris, who ultimately became Lord Charteris, who was the private secretary to the Queen that figures so prominently in The Crown. He lived there with his wife. His wife was actually very nice as well. I can't remember her name, but she was really quite lovely. And they lived there. George Younger, who was one of the secretaries of state in Mrs. Thatcher's government, lived there. Lord and Lady Cobham lived there. Then Penny Cobham ran off with David Mellor, and she kept the flat and she shared it with David Mellor. To those of you who don't know, David Mellor was again another Secretary of State during the Thatcher years. And I used to know David Mellor very vaguely because we had friends in common and we were often at dinner parties together. He knows a great deal about music, but he's not exactly my favourite cup of tea, let me put it that way. I think he's a little bit bumptious, but he certainly does know a lot about music. Oh, gosh. Lord Luce, Richard Luce, and his wife. She was a Lindsay, and several members of the Lindsay family lived there. The Lindsays are the Earls of Crawford and Balcarres, and Lady Anne Fumey, who was at the time that Lord Crawford's aunt, she lived there. She lived upstairs from us. Mrs. Osborne King, who was the Queen's lady-in-waiting, and the Queen often visited her. She lived upstairs from us. Lady Milford Haven's mother, Mrs. Bryce, she lived upstairs from us. Then when she died, Janet's son, Lord Ivor Mountbatten, moved into Mrs. Bryce's flat, and he lived there. And Ivor, who's really very sweet, he's the first member of the extended royal family to have entered into a gay marriage, which he did about 2 or 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was a great community because everybody was on a par, so to speak, and everybody was well-mannered and friendly and very nice. I mean, really very nice. And, so because you lived there, you knew exactly what was going on, because of course we all knew each other and would chat, and so I wouldn't say there were no secrets, but it was a very vibrant community where everybody was well-mannered and very helpful and decent and compassionate. And I had Tum Tum and Pops Miranda there. Mm-hmm. Then Maisie came after, and she was born there as well. And then you children and your nanny. And people were very sweet about it, but I mean, it was a little bit cramped. 2 children, a nanny, and 3 dogs was really. And so the Grosvenor Estate very kindly said to me, would you like to have a house on Bourne Street. And they gave me the lease. They didn't sell me, they gave me the lease of what was the largest of the original houses on Bourne Street, which I thought was very compassionate of them and really very decent. I don't think there were any scandals that I recall. I mean, people used to gossip, but I mean, Charles and Camilla, yes, in the early days, that's where their romance began. And that's where they used to meet, but not that often and not that regularly, because, of course, each of them had a country life as well. And the thing about the Kandy Street flats, which you most likely don't remember, is everybody had a country house. So we all piled into our cars on the Thursday evening or the Friday morning and went down to our places in the country and came back, some people on Sunday, some people on Monday. I used to do Thursday evening to Monday evening until you children started to go to school, at which point I had to do Friday evening. No, sorry, I didn't. We did, because remember, Hill House used to allow you to leave at midday. So we had to leave London before 2 o'clock on a Friday afternoon to miss the heavy traffic, which is why Hill House let the students out at midday on a Friday. So everybody could clear out and go to the country. And then on Sunday evening, after supper, you, Dima, the nanny, and the dogs were all piled into the car after supper on a Sunday evening, and you slept, and then you were taken upstairs once we got to Bourne Street. And before that, when we were at Kandy Street, you were taken, because ours was the ground floor flat. And I don't know if that answers the question.
No, I think it does.
I hope they find it interesting.
You've got a few stories out there and told her a bit about who's been there. And so, yeah.
Yes, everybody was really very nice, I mean, because people had good manners and they were considerate. There was one person there who I couldn't stand, who I liked at first. He was a great friend of my mother-in-law, and then they fell out. And I won't mention his name. Oh, but he was such a bitch. Because, he really was just such a pill. But aside from him, everybody was great. So, next question. Any other questions?
Yes. So for our next question today is from Kate London. One thing I wish people would understand about Diana is that being bulimic is very similar to having a drug or alcohol addiction, especially in how it affects body chemistry for the worse, and it is catastrophic effect on all relationships. To be blunt, royal or not, it is almost impossible to have a happy marriage with an addict or a bulimic. That because the person isn't themselves. Their personality is completely distorted. They are constantly moody, have a false view of life, they are secretive, they lie constantly, they are all enthralled to the drugs, booze, or the adrenaline boost of purging themselves 4 times a day. What do you think?
I think that is a very fair observation. I certainly have experience of having lived with addicts. I know that bulimics get hooked on the endorphins that are released when you expectorate, let's put it that way. Because, of course, I checked this out with doctors when I was writing about Diana's illness. It's a very distressing illness to suffer from, and it's also a very distressing illness to be a part of, because for a spouse it is extremely difficult to cope with. And if I remember correctly, in the Andrew Morton book, it might not be Andrew's book, but I think it is, Prince Charles was denigrated for having found Diana's conduct in that regard off-putting, and that there were times when she smelt of, you could tell that she had been sick, and that was a turn-off. And I don't think it's anything against either the Prince of Wales or Diana that he had a natural repulsion. The Queen certainly used to blame the problems in the marriage on Diana's bulimia, because she felt with a degree of merit that if Diana's bulimia could be managed and she could have it treated and want to treat it, and Diana did not want to treat it for years, that it would mean that once that problem was solved, they could actually deal with the underlying problems that had caused the bulimia. This was not being harsh or trying to blame Diana or trying to pass the buck. It was just the reality, in much the same way that when I was with Colin Campbell, and then my whole time as a daughter of mummy, where you just hoped they'd give up the booze, because until they gave up the booze, nothing else could be solved. You have to give up the source of your addiction before you can be dealing with the underlying causes that cause the addiction. People have jumped on the fact that the Queen thought that Diana's bulimia was a huge issue in the marriage. And, but no, it's not. It's because she was under too much pressure from fame and this and that. No. Until the bulimia was controlled and managed and dealt with, nothing else could be dealt with. In much the same way, there's no point with a drinking alcoholic or a drug addict of saying, oh yes, continue drinking, continue taking your drugs, and we'll deal with the effects of the problems, because it's never going to stop. What people need to understand is bulimics are addicted to the release of the endorphins that they get when they expectorate. Now, I used to suffer terribly when I was younger with migraine headaches. And there were times when nothing would work. And your body, and this is something people don't understand, your body has its own light switch where pain is concerned that flicks it off when it becomes unbearable. If you suffer from migraines and nothing else has worked, your body ultimately performs what a bulimic does. By expectorating, you release endorphins, and that usually goes some way towards relieving the headache. If it doesn't the first time, your body forces you to be sick a second time. And I can tell you from personal experience, it works every time the second time. You then lie in a darkened room and you are like completely wrung out, but you don't have any more pain, because in the act of vomiting, your body releases these endorphins that are natural painkillers, and they kill the pain.
Mm-hmm.
And the proof of the pudding where Diana is concerned is in the eating. Once she willingly went into therapy to help herself and overcome her problems, she flourished. She gained weight. She stabilized far more. By the time she died, she was really coming into her own again. It's almost as if she was once her bulimia kicked in, which it did shortly after her engagement, until really into the 90s. That's when she resumed being Diana.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, she was still, there were aspects of her that were Diana, but she was not as cohesive a personality. And, you know, sometimes when I say things like that, people say I'm putting Diana down. I'm not. It is a terrible thing to be ill. And when you are ill the way she was ill, it's a terrible thing for you. It's a terrible thing for everybody else around you,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a terrible thing for you. There is no disgrace in people being ill. But we need to face the facts that she genuinely was a very ill woman for much of her life. She wasn't an ill girl, and she really only developed, and I say that her personality imploded, is how I put it. And it remained imploded and fractured until the last few years of her life, when she got herself together, she got treatment. She voluntarily went towards the end of her life and got treatment. But by her own account, in the early days when her illnesses became apparent, which was really on her honeymoon up at Balmoral, because her conduct was so erratic and so volatile and so unpredictable. And, you know, it took a while for everybody to figure out what was really going on, because also bulimics hide the fact that they are bulimic. So it took a while for them to figure out what the problem was, but they knew there was some problem. I fail to understand why people do not have the compassion for the other victims of bulimia that they have for the other victims of alcoholism and drug addiction. And why? Because Diana Wales had this problem that somehow the royal family should not be given the sympathy that they deserve in having had to deal with it. Because believe me, bulimia is one of the most difficult conditions to deal with. That and anorexia are really difficult.
You got to the point, like, if you've got an addiction and people know about it, those people could also help that person try and get help.
But of course, with addicts, until they want to help
That's what I was
themselves,
going to get to.
nobody can help them.
Until she wanted it, then it started.
I mean, look at your grandmother. Mummy went the whole of her life and she didn't want help. And when your uncle said to her she had cirrhosis of the liver, she was going to die within 18 months if she didn't give up drinking, she refused to give up drinking. And then what she didn't realize was that when your liver is completely destroyed and you cannot reverse the effects. So, I mean, my point is that this is a woman who had everything to live for.
Yes.
And had no interest whatsoever in giving up her addiction. Mm-hmm. Because as far as she was concerned, it wasn't a problem, it was a solution. You know? And that's the thing with addictions. Mm-hmm. They are often a solution, the person, the addict thinks, to what is really the underlying problem. And I hope this has been of help, and I hope that this has been of interest. And I can only tell you, I know only too well how very difficult it is, because I've had relations of mine who've also had eating disorders, and it, as well as addictions. And believe me, everybody deserves compassion, not only the addict. And I include bulimics in that number because they are addicts. They are addicted to the endorphins that making themselves sick trigger. And everybody deserves sympathy. And I just fail to understand why some people think the royal family are not deserving of the compassion that they do deserve because of having had to deal with this problem with Diana, you know, and not only the royal family, her own family as well. I mean, it was a very difficult situation for everybody concerned, you know. And on that note, I'll say thank you very much for listening. I hope you have enjoyed this, if enjoy is the right word. And please keep the questions coming in. And our next is going to be much more light-hearted. In fact, we've got a little treat in store for you, because we have a little bit of a spoof up our sleeves, don't we?
Yes.
As well as other stuff.
Yes.
Okay, so.
Well, thank you, everybody, and we hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, hit the like button, subscribe, and share with your friends. Thank you very much, and goodbye.